So you're all very welcome to this course called Sailing the Worldly Winds. So my name is Vajrashura, and I'll be leading these next 5 weeks together, where we'll be learning about the worldly winds, a really interesting and useful teaching from the Buddha, and we'll be exploring them together. And I'll say a bit more about myself in a few moments, and I'll say a bit more about we'll introduce the team. So we have a big team of about 10 people or so. But to give you a sense of what we'll be doing, tonight, let me just share my PowerPoint screen here. So to give you a sense of what we'll do tonight, I hope people can see that all right. So we'll begin with some introductions. I'll introduce you to the evening, to the course. We'll introduce ourselves. And we will have small groups, then breakout rooms to say it, so it's not all one-way traffic from me talking at you. And you'll have a chance then to talk as well to each other. They won't be too long, so don't worry if you find breakout rooms traumatic on Zoom. They'll be very, very pleasant indeed. We'll look at what are the worldly winds. So the whole course is about the worldly winds. So we'll look at what they are. And we'll look at them in the context of Buddhism. So they're a Buddhist teaching. You don't have to be a Buddhist to do the course, but they are in the Buddhist context. So we'll look at that. We'll do some reflection before the break, and then we'll have a break. So every night we'll do a short meditation or a short reflection or a bit of both. We'll look a bit more at the worldly winds. It's very general now that my heading's here, but we'll look a bit more specifically at the 8 worldly winds. We'll do a bit more reflection, and then we'll have home practice. And included in the home practice will be groups about how to set your intentions just for 5 minutes or so. I'll say more about the groups in a few minutes. Yeah. Okay, welcome if you just arrived. A few more people have just joined us. Welcome Kieran. Yeah, so Kieran, Stephen Kieran has just arrived as well. So Kieran's on the team as well. So Stephen, perhaps you can rename Kieran to reflect with the team bit. Okay, so to say a bit about myself then, and then I'll let the team introduce themselves as well. So my name is Vajrashura, as I've said. I'm a member of the Triathlon Buddhist order. That's why I have the funny name. That's why I have the kesa around my neck, which is you could say it's our equivalent of robes. I've been meditating and practicing Buddhist since around 1999, 2000. I learned to meditate in 1999, and sometime over the next year or two, I realized I was a Buddhist. And so I've been practicing meditation. I've been practicing Buddhism ever since. And I've been working in the Dublin Buddhist Centre for the last 18 years or so as well. And I've come across this teaching a few times. Well, I'm really delighted to be on this course tonight and leading this course because I came across this book a few years ago when it came out, Sailing the Worldly Winds, which is the book I've been recommending for the course. And I found it just a really useful teaching. And when you start paying attention to the worldly winds, you start to see them all over the place. And you start to see just how much in your life that you can be blown around by them. And also you can see just how great it is to be free of them as well, actually. And one of the things the main purpose of the course really is to help you to become free of being blown around by the worldly winds. Yeah. So anyways, that's a little bit about me. And I'm here in my bedroom in Drumcondra, by the way, teaching the course, obviously. I'm not in the Buddhist Centre, in case you're wondering why there's a big bed in the Buddhist Centre. And also then I'm well supported by the team of people who are here. So I'm going to ask them just to unmute themselves in a moment and just say their name and who they are. And Stephen, who's doing our tech support, will highlight them one by one. So Stephen, could we go with Amy first?
Hello, I'm Amy, and I'm here in Kilkenny, and I've been coming to the centre for probably about 3.5 years now, and I'm really excited to be doing the course.
Great, thanks, Amy. So Kieran, if you're happy just to briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi everyone, great to be here. It's really great to see so many people as well. Yeah, I'm 19. I'm in Glasnevin. I've been meditating for over a year now, but I've been distracted for a lot of that time and for the rest of my 18 years as well. But the path to enlightenment, which is why I'm here. So yeah,
Great.
that's it.
Thanks, Kieran. And David?
Yeah. Hey guys, my name is David. I've been going to the centre since 2018. I'm down here at Clonliffe Avenue, right beside Croker. And yeah, I'm delighted to be on this course because I've been described as windy in the past. So I need to find out more about the winds. And again, one of my favourite memories of the centre was the support team the first night when I was learning to meditate. So when Vajrashura asked me to be part of it, I was delighted. So wishing you the best of luck.
Great. And then Oscar?
Hi, I've been a meditator for 3 years. I first came to Dublin Buddhist Centre a few years ago, but only really got into things in sort of 2018. It was 2 years ago, a friend of mine actually recommended reading Sailing the Worldly Winds, so I'm looking forward to actually finally getting around to that.
Great. And thanks, Oscar. And then Matthew?
Hi, how you doing, guys? I'm out in Meath in my bedroom since the beginning of the pandemic, but I'm excited to meet everyone. I've been meditating for about a year properly, and been doing the courses that have been online with the centre since the start of the pandemic, and really enjoying them. And yeah, happy to finally be supporting the course as well now. So it's really cool.
Great. And I think I've got thanks, Matthew. I told Stephen I'm doing this alphabetically and I've messed it up. So Kelly is next.
So hi everyone, and I've been meditating for about a year as well with the Dublin Buddhist Centre, and I'm really excited to be here with you all. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And Greta?
Hi everyone, delighted to meet you all. I'm really looking forward to the course, and thanks to Vajrashura for asking me to join today. Thank you.
Okay, great. And let's see who's left then. So Sam, I'm abandoning my alphabetical. I just can't keep track.
Hey guys, I'm Sam. Great to be here with all of you. I have been meditating since 2014. I first came to the centre in 2017, and I thought the cover of this book looked very beautiful, but we shouldn't judge it by a cover, and I think it's going to be great. So thank you.
Great, and thanks. And then Catherine, I've missed Catherine as well. I'm sorry. Just totally. Let's not do things alphabetically next time.
Hi guys, I'm Catherine. I'm here in Portlaoise, and yeah, I've been meditating for about 3 years or so, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to getting started. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Catherine. And then the other person is Stephen. I think it's Stephen's the last person. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. It's just great to be involved. I've always found incredible benefit in just getting involved in these courses. Looking forward to sharing it with you. Best luck to you all.
Great. And Stephen's doing the tech, as I've said, and all the team will be leading your breakout rooms as well. So you'll all get to know one of them quite well, or one or two of them quite well over the course. Yeah. And one of the lockdown has been a pain, but one of the lovely things about lockdown is that we can run these big courses on Zoom, where you have people in Portlaoise and I can't remember all the other places that people have said. So, it's really lovely to be able to do this online in a way. It's one advantage of the lockdown. And also it's lovely to see so many people here. There's 80 people now here, and we could probably fit about 20-25 people in our shrine room in the Buddhist Centre. So that's another one of the few advantages of lockdown. Yeah. Okay, and speaking of the centre, then I just want to say a little bit about the Buddhist Centre. That so the Dublin Buddhist Centre is part. It won't be able to introduce itself, but it's part of a worldwide Buddhist community called the Triathlon Buddhist community. And the Buddhist Centre was set up in 1991 in Ireland, and it's a not-for-profit religious charity. So basically, what we're about in the Buddhist Centre is just offering the Buddhist teachings to people to help improve their lives. We don't get paid for any of this. We just do it because we love communicating meditation. We love communicating Buddhist teachings. We love communicating things that are going to help people's lives. So that's why we're here. It's a labor of love, and it's not even a labor at that. Okay. And then just to give you a sense of overview of the course, I mean, I know some people are probably really keen just to get stuck in, but some people really like seeing the overview before we do. So just to share again the structure of the course. So it's a 5-week course, and this week we're going to look at an introduction to the 8 worldly winds. Yeah. Next week, we'll look a bit more at how to sail the worldly winds more effectively. So we will be looking at that tonight as well. But next week, we're going to go into more detail about how to get through these worldly winds of gain and loss and fame and infamy and pleasure and pain and so on. In the 3rd week, we're going to focus a bit more on meditation. So I've called that week Calm Amidst the Storm. So meditation is a really vital tool to help us to be able to remain centered when we're being blown around by these winds. In week 4, we'll look at how we can deepen our perspective in terms of taking the more, what you might call the more, from a Buddhist point of view, the more wisdom approach to the worldly winds. So I'll say what I mean about that more on the night. And then Winds from the West this is one of the chapter titles in the book. And this is more about how there's particular winds in our Western culture that particularly blow us around, looking perhaps a bit more at consumerism and so on and things like that, which I'll touch into during the course as well. So yes, that's an overview of the 5 weeks of the course. I hope you'll be there for all of it. And if you can't make any of the weeks of the course, we will also be recording each night. And we'll make the recording available the next day. But it is much better if you can come because you'll get to participate in the breakout rooms. A recording is never quite the same as being there. You know what I mean? It's like the difference in watching a concert and being in the stadium. So it's a bit like that. So do try and come every week if you can. I see people are still coming in, so welcome if you just arrived. And we will be giving you home practice each week. So we will be asking you to reflect upon these things at home during the week. So just don't be shocked when I bring that out at the end. And then the other two or three just other small housekeeping points, just to mention that we are working from this book. So that's called Sailing the Worldly Winds. And the caption is A Buddhist Way Through the Ups and Downs of Life. So that's what the course is based upon. And I would really recommend getting the book if you can. And part of the home practice, the homework, will be to read a chapter or two, usually a chapter from this book. And it's very slim. It won't take you very long to read. And it's a really good book. Vajrashura is the chap who wrote it. I know him from being in our Buddhist community. He's a very, very good writer, I think. It's a beautiful image as well, actually. And we've arranged a 10% discount for you if you want to buy it. So you should have received that email. Greta and Catherine, I think I didn't get you the email by mistake, so I'll get those emails to you. Sorry about that. It was a bit of a mix-up on our end. The book has been out of stock. Thanks, Colette. By the way, do put comments in the chat if you want to. So yeah, do stick your comments in the chat. There's too many of us to all unmute, but you could also try the ebook version of it. So I didn't realize the book has been out of stock. Sorry about that, Colette. You can survive the course without it. You know what I mean? We'll be doing content each week, and you can just keep doing what we do on the night. But if you can get the book, and you could always get the ebook and download some kind of e-reader. If you have any problems, well, the next thing will help you, because what I also want you to do is to join something called Slack. Yeah, so Slack is how would you describe it? It's a communications forum that we've set up, and you can set up particular forums for particular things. So I'm just going to share my screen with you again. So this is Slack, okay? So this is our DBC Sangha Slack. So hopefully you can see my mouse up there. And a Sangha is a community. So this is our community Slack, and we have different channels that you can use. So we have a channel here for Sailing the Worldly Winds. So you can chat during the week in the channel here. So I'm going to just type hello to everyone on the course, and you can read that on Slack then during the week. You've already read it, I'm sure now. But there's also things like there's a general chat where you can ask questions. You can We'll add more channels here about, you can share moments of beauty, you could check in how you're getting on, things like that. And it's like a really well organized WhatsApp, but that you can turn the messages off for, and doesn't hassle you. And it's also a nice way to stay in touch with the people on the course. And it might be just really useful for you as well to put in, okay, I've done my 10 minutes of reflection today and it was really interesting. And it can be a good way to externalize it so that it makes you, and it's really interesting to read what other people are thinking as well. So do join the Slack. Let's see, Stephen, could you share that link from earlier? And we'll send it out in the email tomorrow anyway with some instructions. But anyways, do think of that. And then the last thing in terms of organizing is that if with Zoom, if your connection is poor, and sometimes your connection does get poor in Slack, you can turn off your video. And I think our internet connections often get quite challenged when there's a lot of people. So when it's 80 people, it might be more challenging for your computer or your broadband than when you're in a small group of 5 or 6. So you might want to turn your camera on again for the groups, but you could leave it off if your internet connection's dodgy. And if your connection's dodgy in the group, you can turn off your camera again. If you're on you can also switch to gallery view at any stage if you want, up near the top right on the computer where you see the view, or on your phone, you can swipe right, I think, and see different people. The big temptation now that we're online for courses is to also be reading your email in the background or be reading the newspaper in the background. And I've kind of perfected my my look like I'm really taking people in while I'm actually reading the paper, I must confess, in Zoom meetings. And I even can manage a bit of a titter, a bit of a laugh, when someone makes something funny, but I'm actually reading, I don't know, the sports section of the Irish Times or something. So that's a confession. That's not a good thing to be doing. But I'd really encourage you on this course to try and just keep yourself really focused on the Zoom screen. And don't be too fragmented. Turn off your phone for a couple of hours, or turn it to do not disturb or whatever. I'd really encourage you to do that if you can, and try not to be too distracted by what's going on around. And if you drop out of the course, like if your connection stops, you can just come back in with the same link, and it will be the same Zoom link every week for the next 5 weeks. So it's the same Zoom link, but we'll remind you of that. And I'll also be recording, as I said, but none of your faces will be visible on the video. We'll edit out any bit where people are talking or whatever, where they're visible. Okay, so that's a lot of information. I think what we'll do now is, why don't we just do a short meditation just to arrive for 5 minutes, because we can often come quite frazzled from our day or quite busy from our day, and it can be good just to settle. So what I'd recommend is, you don't have to go into like a full meditation posture. You can if you want, if you know how to do that, but I'm just going to sit upright in my chair. And so mainly just sit kind of upright and comfortable in a way that you can sit for 5 minutes. That's really what you want. You can sit for 5 minutes, and I'll just lead us in a short body scan, and then I'll say more about what's going to happen then. So just settling into being here in this chair, on these cushions, or whatever you're sitting on. I'm just opening out to whatever sounds we can hear. You can close our eyes if you're happy to do that. Just taking in the room, the sounds, the surroundings. You might hear a car driving past, or someone make noise in the next room. And then starting to tune into your body a bit more. So noticing perhaps the contact of your feet with the floor, or your sitting bones with the chair, or your lower back with the back support or the cushions. Really bringing yourself down into your body, noticing particular moments of contact. And opening to what we can feel in our legs, in our knees, in our hips, pelvis, and groin. You might not be able to feel much. It might be quite vivid. Opening to what we can feel in the hands and the arms. What can we feel in the palms of the hands? Forearms, the elbows, the upper arms. Becoming aware of our face, making sure it's soft and at ease. We're not frowning or holding any shape. Becoming aware of our shoulders and our shoulder blades and our back. As best we can. Becoming aware of our stomach and our chest. Noticing how our stomach and abdomen and chest move as we breathe in and as we breathe out. And taking 3 deeper breaths all the way down to the belly. Breathing out each time. And then relaxing the breath and just being with the breath. Just sitting again for the last few moments. Just being here in this room with these sounds, with these surroundings. And then when you're ready, bringing the practice to a close, becoming aware again of the room around you, introducing movement. And in your own time, opening your eyes. Okay. So what we'll do now is we will go into groups. So it's good that it can get very passive if you're just sitting receiving information from a computer or a person on a computer. So we're going to go into groups, and it's nice to chat with other people on these courses and meet new people. I mean, a lot of the time on lockdown, we don't really get to meet many new people, do we? And Stephen is our tech wizard tonight, and he's going to assign you to different groups. So in a few moments, not just yet, you'll get an invite to join a group, or you'll be put into a group. We'll do those for 10 minutes, actually, Stephen, just to flag 10 minutes. And the group is really just an opportunity to say who you are. It might be interesting to say where you're from and what brought you on the course tonight. Yeah, what brought you on the course tonight? And there's a couple of things about the groups that the leader, the person chairing the group will have team in their name. So you can look to them for guidance if you're not sure what's happening. And they'll also keep an eye on the time to make sure that everyone gets a chance to talk. And if you have any questions or anything, you can come back, you can bring them back to the main group as well, and so on. Or you might discuss them there. You might have a bit of time left over to talk at the end. But the really important thing is that this week we will send you to the groups, but in subsequent weeks, we'll ask you to pick your group and go to the same group each time. So my group is going to be called, I think it's Vajrashura. We've given them all a couple of names, just so you remember them. You might want to write them down. So my group is Vajrashura Red Diamond. So it's a color and an item, yeah? And diamond is in my name. That's my Buddhist name. So that's why I picked that one. But don't read too much into any of the ones that people have. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about them. So you'll see those when you get into the group. You'll see the name of the group and just try and remember it. And look, if you forget about it, don't worry, Stephen will have the list. So Stephen will preserve the list for next week. But we're hoping to save on admin each week that people can go into those groups themselves in the future. So if Stephen is ready, he can send us in, or if not, I'll have to fill some more airtime by talking about something. How are we doing, Stephen? Oh, everyone's been invited. Okay. So just to say that like I said, we'll be in the same groups each week. So it might be nice if you I'll email you every week with the notes and stuff. So it might be nice to let me know if you can't make the course, so I can tell Stephen as well. And I know that the groups don't always work. They're a bit technically finicky. So thanks, Marie. That's okay about not being able to get the link into the groups. Okay. Just going to mute everyone again. So I think we're okay to do one more bit of input, and then I'll talk for about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have a short reflection and a tea break. We'll have the reflection if we have time. We might do a longer reflection at the end if we don't. So I wanted to talk a bit about the worldly winds then, finally, after 43 minutes of being on the course, we'll start talking about the worldly winds. So the worldly winds are a teaching that come from the Buddha. Now, the Buddha was a human being, just like you or I, who woke the earth 2,500 years ago, and through his own efforts, gained enlightenment. And I'll come back to what that means in a few minutes. But he gained enlightenment around the age of 35, 36, and he lived on then till he was around 69 or 70. And in all that time, then, that's 35 years or so. He walked around northern India, lived homelessly. The monks and nuns would just kind of wander from place to place, sleeping at the base of trees and stuff, and beg their food and give teachings to people about what it means to be enlightened and how one can become more free. Yeah. And the worldly winds were one of the Buddhist teachings that he gave. He seemed to refer to them quite a lot, actually. And one of the main sources is from the Pali Canon, a text called the Loka Vipatti Sutta. So the Pali Canon is a kind of a canon. It's a body of teachings, and Pali is kind of the language that it's written in. Pali is kind of like the Buddhist equivalent of Latin. It's one of the main two languages that a lot of Indian Buddhism was recorded in. The other one being Sanskrit. And these give the Pali Canon are very early, so they go right back to the Buddha's life, and they're fairly faithful on the whole, although there's a lot of historical analysis being done on them. But this is one of the texts, the Loka Vipatti Sutta, which means the failings of the world. So I'll just read the opening. And the Buddha says to his monks, he says, "These 8 worldly conditions spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8 worldly conditions." Which 8? Gain, loss, fame, disgrace, praise, blame, pleasure, and pain. These are the 8 worldly conditions that spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8 worldly conditions. So you can read the whole text of that teaching. It's quite a short one in the back of the book. So you can see it there, the Buddha's teaching on the 8 of the worldly winds. So that's on back of page 109 at the end of the book. So you can check that out again during the week. Don't read it now. It'll be part of the homework as well. And what he's saying is that these 8 worldly winds blow us around the place. They make up 4 sets of pairs, and we welcome one and we rebel against the other. So we want one and we push away the other. Yeah. And I'll just again, I'm going to use PowerPoint quite liberally on this course. So just to say what those worldly winds are. So they're praise and blame. They're fame and infamy, or disrepute or disgrace, you could say, for infamy. Gain and loss, and pleasure and pain. And some of them might seem quite similar. And generally what we try to do with our lives is we try and gain as much as we can of the ones on the left and avoid as much as possible the ones on the right. And the Buddha said that the run-of-the-mill person, the person who doesn't practice the Dharma he's teaching, or who doesn't have a spiritual practice, or someone who's foolish, well, they welcome one and they rebel against the other. And when you get really caught up with welcoming one or getting one, like the ones on the left, and when you get really caught up on trying to avoid the ones on the right, you won't be released, according to the Buddha, from stress, from pain, from distress, from suffering, even from a Buddhist point of view, from birth and rebirth, birth and death. But we can come back to that again if you want. But if you're a wise person, if you're a well-instructed person, as the text says, you start to see these pairs of praise and blame, fame and infamy, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. You start to see them as 2 sides of the one coin, actually. And you start to see that they're inconstant. They're not dependable upon. They're stressful and they're subject to change. And you neither get intoxicated when you find one and dismayed when you have the other. Yeah. And one of the things, it's not that we can't enjoy praise. We can't enjoy a sense of being, well liked or famous. It's not that we can't enjoy gaining things. It's not that we can't enjoy pleasure. We should actually enjoy pleasure. But the problem is we get really caught up in gaining it, and we get really worried about losing it and ending up in pain. And so the Buddha called them the loka dhammas, the worldly conditions. But Perhaps a more poetic translation, which he also did use, is the worldly winds. So these are the worldly winds that we cause us a lot of distress and unhappiness. Yeah. And in terms of the word wind, I was just reflecting upon the word wind earlier. And I think the word wind or winds is a really interesting word for them. It's very suggestive. We can be blown hither and thither. We can be swept along by the wind. Yeah. And I was thinking earlier, I've been cycling for many years now. I'm 44 now. I've been cycling a bike in and out to school since I was about 12. And I don't know if any of you are cyclists, but I think one of the things that anyone who's cycled for any length of time learns is that you can't trust the wind. You can't depend upon the wind. If the wind is against you, if the wind is with you as you're cycling down a street, you know that it'll probably be against you as you turn the corner. Or you also know that you probably have to cycle back against that same wind later on that day. I remember one time being up in Achill with my partner, and we were cycling the Greenway. I don't know if anyone's done the Greenway up in the west of Ireland. Wonderful thing to do. So we're cycling from Achill over as far as Mulranny, and beautiful countryside, really enjoyable. But the thing we didn't realize, and we had such a lovely time, and we were cycling along, and it was all really easy, and it felt like we could cycle forever. But the thing we didn't realize is that the winds are always westerly in that direction, up in that part of the world. So while we felt like we'd go forever for some of it, cycling back was hellish, and we got very tired very quickly. It's also mostly uphill on the way back as well. So, so it's almost like for every bit of wind that helps you, there's probably an opposing wind that'll oppose you as well at times, particularly if we go too far on the basis of, if we can get, when the wind is at your back, you can get an exaggerated sense of your own abilities in terms of cycling anyway, that's certainly what we found. So the world on its own terms, these worldly winds on their own terms aren't dependable. We will explore what is dependable from a Buddhist point of view, but we can't stake all our happiness on, for example, being praised. Yeah, because that'll just flip over into blame at a certain point. When there's praise, it'll almost certainly at some other point be blame. When we're well liked, like fame, it's almost certain that at times we will be not well liked. So, and it feels like the more we put our happiness on the left ones, the more strongly we're affected by the ones on the right. We can't base our happiness on gain, because we'll feel more keenly the loss then. And we can't put our happiness entirely upon just feeling well and feeling pleasure, because we'll find it all the more painful then when we're not in that kind of state. And we'll be going more into all of this throughout the whole course. So we have to watch out for the winds. The winds change directions. That's the other thing about the wind. And the wind can change from a pleasant cooling breeze to a freezing storm. Yeah. I have a friend of mine who's Spanish, who lived in Ireland for a few years and eventually moved away. And he said what really got him in Ireland was the wind. It wasn't the temperature, it was the relentlessness of the wind. So wind can be quite challenging as well. The other thing about the wind, the image of the wind, is that we can't stop the wind. Yeah, we can't control the wind. We can't direct the wind. So I think that's another reason why it's a really good image here, that we can't control these forces blowing in our lives. All we can do is try not to get upset by them, yeah, and try not to invest our well-being in the wind blowing a certain way today. It'd be like saying, my day will be happy if the wind blows me into work and the wind blows me home again from work as I cycle in and out of work. That would be really foolish. But that's what we kind of do, spiritually speaking, with the worldly winds. Yeah. Also, the winds blow on everyone. Yeah. The winds blow on everyone. So it's impersonal that we experience praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and infamy, pleasure and pain. There's nothing personal. It happens to everyone. It's part of the human condition. So don't take them personally either. So I think that's quite a nice thing to keep in mind as well, particularly when the winds particularly blow against you very strongly, when you have lots of loss. It can be comforting to think, well, this is just the worldly winds. This happens to everyone. Wind blows on everyone. Yeah. And also then the wind kind of fans the flames. So a traditional image from the Buddha again is that the world is on fire with greed, hatred, and delusion, And the worldly winds, if we get caught up in them very strongly, they blow and fan those fires of hatred and greed and envy and ignorance that cause a lot of suffering in the world. And the Buddhist vision, what the Buddha is about, was trying to communicate in a way that people could live less on the basis of greed, hatred, and delusion, and more on the basis of wisdom, loving kindness, awareness, energy, and so on. And that's what the Buddhist path is, and moving from those negatives to those positives. Yeah. And again, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, there's nothing wrong with gain, all those kinds of things. It's more how we relate to them. Just to say that Buddhism isn't down on pleasure or anything like that. So our usual responses to the positive pairs, the positive parts of the pairs, I'll show them on screen again just so you can see them. Our usual responses to praise, to fame, to gain, to pleasure. Well, I mean, we might have quite a healthy response where we just go, oh, here's praise, here's fame, here's gain, here's pleasure. I'm going to enjoy these, but not get too caught up in them. That's a healthy response. But our usual, perhaps unhealthy responses are things like elation, complacency, intoxication, vindication, triumphalism, forgetfulness. We forget that they're just temporary, for example, and we get complacent and just think it'll always be like this. We can feel confident, we can feel lucky, we can feel happy when these happen. And then our usual responses to the more negative pairs on the right, negative ones on the right, is we can feel anxious, we can feel irritable, we can feel grief, we can experience depression, we can give out to ourselves, we can have self-recrimination, we can feel like we're being unfairly treated, we can feel like we're a victim, we can feel like we're unlucky, and we can feel unhappy. And we'll tend to oscillate between these two. When we feel ill, I had a bad cold last week, and I was really washed out by it. I just felt, oh, why is this happening to me, And we can get into all kinds of stories, and actually it's just a cold, and actually I'm really lucky that it's just a cold, not COVID, for example, Or when we have a sense of pleasure, we feel like we're winning at life, and that we're a champion and that we're the best thing since sliced bread, and that doesn't help us really either, So the whole course is about noticing these wins and practicing to become more free. And next week I'll be talking about doorways to liberation that kind of emerge from each of the pairs, but you can read them in the book as well, but we'll come back to those next week. But for now, the main thing I think is to notice them. And the home practice this week will be noticing just when you're being blown around by the winds and seeing if you can have a more creative response than just being caught up in them. And I think we can notice with the small things. We can notice how, when the person beside you in your house gets the slightly larger dinner, that you feel hard done by, that they have a bigger sense of gain and we've lost out. I think one of the things about lockdown is that we start to really get caught up in the small things because there's no big things left in some ways to get caught up in at times, Or you can notice how, that person's car is slightly nicer than yours and you feel like, or we can notice how one of our housemates gets praised for doing something well and we wish we were praised more, things like that. So noticing very small things where we feel those kinds of responses that aren't very generous and just working with those, that's what we need to do. And then one or two more things to say. So just about the worldly winds, I think these are really useful teachings. And they're really useful teachings because firstly, they're very practical. You can see them immediately. You can see pleasure and pain and how caught up you get in them very, very quickly. And a lot of what we'll cover is very practical and very immediate. Yeah, so I think that's why it's a really useful teaching. It also shows the connection very quickly between ethics and wisdom. So I think this might need a bit of unpacking as the course goes on. But what I mean by ethics is how we behave in each moment. Do we choose to respond creatively in each moment, or do we kind of react in the same old patterns that are unhelpful? That's what ethics is. And then wisdom is about, from a Buddhist point of view, wisdom is about recognizing the underlying patterns of life and living in accordance with these. So recognizing, for example, that it's really important not to get too caught up in being praised, because inevitably at some other point you'll be blamed, and things like that, or you won't get the praise you really want. or that praise ultimately can't make you deeply happy. That's what wisdom is. So by practicing these, we can become more wise as well. And then the third one, and this is really important too, is that any aspect of Buddhist practice isn't just about making yourself happy. It's about improving the world around you for everyone around you as well. That's really central to Buddhism right from the beginning. It's not enough to work to make yourself happy or bring meaning to your own life. It has to be in relation to other people as well. And when we're negatively caught up in the winds, that'll tend to spill over into, if we're really irritated about what we've lost that day or what we haven't gained, that'll affect all the people around us as well. And if we can, on the other hand, respond with calmness, with clarity, with equanimity to things as they happen, that'll also spill out into our lives and affect the people around us, and that can have quite a positive effect on the people around us as well. Yeah. Okay, so why don't we just do another short reflection now, actually, just to bring that into our experience. No worries, Eileen, that's fine. Eileen's been called away. So why don't we just set ourselves up again, and we'll just do this for a short period of time, for 5 minutes or so. And just to say that in the book as well, there's suggested reflections in every chapter, so you can come back to these during the week as well. So firstly, maybe just feeling our body again in contact with the chair. I should say as well that if you have any burning questions, there will be an opportunity to ask them in a little while. So for now, just feeling your contact with the chair, with the cushions. Again, taking a deeper breath or two to bring you down into your belly, into your heart. Reflection is mainly done in the guts, in the heart, rather than in the head. And just following the breath lightly if you find that helpful as we reflect. It can also be good to put your hand on your belly just to keep you grounded so you don't get too lost in your head and in your thoughts. So just bringing to mind, now that we've looked at the 8 worldly winds, at least at an introductory level, we will be going into them more. Can you recognize any strong experiences of being caught up in them during the week just gone? So can you recognize any kind of experiences of being caught up in praise and blame? In fame and infamy or disrepute? In gain and loss? In pleasure and pain? Just picking one pair, not trying to do them all, but just one experience of praise and blame, or fame and infamy, or gain and loss, or pleasure and pain. Do you recognize these winds blowing? And there may have been very good reasons for being concerned with them. For example, if if someone died or you lost something very significant, but maybe pick something more every day if you can. If it's don't go into a big grief or a big trauma for now. And just reflecting, does the word wind capture that, being blown around by that? What does that communicate to you? Does it capture it well? And did it help being caught up in the pair? The positive that you've received or the negative that you don't want? Did it help being caught up in the pair? Was there anything that might have been a bit more useful at the time? Not forgetting to breathe as we bring this to mind if we need to, if we get anxious or upset or anything. And then bringing that reflection to a close. We'll spend a bit longer later reflecting on this again. Bringing the practice to a close, letting go of the reflection, just being with the breath for the last few moments, being in the room that we're in. And opening your eyes then when you're ready. Okay, so I've talked to it for a bit now. So what I'd like to do now is take a 10-minute break. So during the break, if you want to, you can turn off your camera and go and get a cup of tea or whatever. Let's be back and ready to go at 8:15. And if you have any questions as well that you want to ask, you can type them in the chat if you want during the break, or you can type them afterwards. We'll have a few minutes afterwards to have that. So we'll see you back here in 10 minutes, 8:15, ready to go. Okay, just one or two, just one little thing to add that I didn't just say there a moment ago, that the course that we're running is completely being done on a donation basis. So what this means is that you're free to give as much or as little as you want to the course. It's completely free, basically. But sorry, I'm just getting the links ready. It's completely free, but the Buddhist Centre is basically kind of almost entirely dependent upon donations at the moment. We're really happy that since the lockdown, we've just offered everything for free online. We just want to offer everything for free online, and as many people as possible can use it, because people really need it at the moment in lockdown and all the challenges of COVID and everything. And what we're doing is we're trying to have a kind of a different kind of model than where you pay for something that you consume. So our model is trying to be that if we just really give to people in the spirit of generosity, in the spirit of Buddhism and the Buddhist teachings, people will give back to us then to help us to keep doing it, because we do have to, even though we're not allowed physically use our physical centre, we do have to keep that going, and we have a small team that we support as well. So if you're in a position to give a donation to the Buddhist Centre, it would be great if you could. You can give as much or as little as you want. You could give, if you won the lottery tomorrow night or whenever it is, on Wednesday, you could give €1,000,000. We'd happily receive that. If you can only give a fiver, that's completely fine. And if you can't give anything at all, that's completely fine. We really mean it that it's completely on a donation basis with no pressure whatsoever on you to give anything. Now, sometimes people find it useful to have a suggestion for what you could give. So for a 5-week course, if you felt like you were in a position to give €100, that would really help us. And that all that money would be really well used just to keep us going, and so that we can offer more courses like this to people. And if you can't give €100, that's completely fine. And if you want to give €2 a week, that's completely fine as well, or whatever way you want to do it. So I'm going to put the links in the chat. So that has all our upcoming events and also the donation link. And I'll include that in the email as well tomorrow that we send out to you. So just to drop that in as well. I didn't see any questions then in the chat. There's one question about how we stop our mind from wandering off, and I will come back to that. I think being in the body and being with the breath are good ways of staying grounded in those moments when we particularly get blown around by the winds. Yeah. So come back and breathe into your belly and put your hand on your belly again, like during that reflection, and just try and be really grounded. But we will be exploring meditation more in week 3 as well. And I'd also recommend learning to meditate. So we have free meditations on our website. So maybe what I'll do, I'll just take a note of this so I don't forget, is to include links to meditation as well. If you want to try, like, what I'd really recommend actually is, if you haven't learned if you have learned to meditate with us before, make sure during this course you do your meditation every day. And if you haven't done the meditation, I'd recommend doing the body scan each day. So I'll send you that in the email. So the body scan is a slightly longer version of the meditation that we did at the start there, which grounds you in your body, and it's a really good one to do, I have to say. Anyway, so that's just in response to one of the questions there about what do you do if your mind is really wandering, and that's just how minds are, and you will get better at it as well as time goes on. Okay, if you have any more questions, do stick them in the chat. So I wanted to say a little bit more about the worldly winds, and then I want to do another reflection and then give you your home practice, and then spend a bit of time in the group so you can talk about how your reflections went and you can set your intentions for the week, yeah? Because I don't want to be talking at you all the time, yeah? So I want to say a bit more about each of them. So let me just get my screen share going again. Where is it? There we go. So I'll just bring up, I'm just going to say a little bit about each of them. I'll talk for about another 15 minutes, I guess. Yeah, I don't think I need to share. So I find it's often easier to look at someone in some ways. Anyways, so just to remind you again, let's see what. Yeah, so to remind you of our usual, the reason the worldly winds are really useful as a teaching is that we get caught up in gaining one and we get really obsessed with trying to push away another. Yeah. And if we get really caught up in the positive ones, we tend to end up, just to remind you of what I said earlier, we tend to end up really elated or intoxicated, or maybe a bit forgetful and complacent that they're temporary, or we tend to feel like we're being really vindicated in our behavior, which may not always be great. We can feel like we're really confident, which might be no bad thing in a way. We can feel like we're really happy or lucky, but the problem is they don't last, yeah? And then we can often flip over into the negatives, which can lead us to states of anxiety, irritability, grief, depression, feeling like we're being victimized, feeling unlucky, feeling unhappy. And a lot of the time as well then, when we get caught up in them, we treat them as scorecards for how well we're doing life, yeah? And it's not that we consciously do this, but we think that because things aren't always pleasant, that we're somehow failing at life, yeah? And then when we're experiencing pleasure, we think that we're winning at life, yeah? And that's not a good paradigm, because there'll always be pain. I don't mean that in a really depressing way, but things will never always go our way. You know what I mean? And just the fact that you have a body will mean that you'll end up with a certain degree of discomfort at times, you know? So you can't use the worldly winds as scorecards for how well your life is going. You're just going to cause yourself unhappiness doing that, yeah? So anyway, so let's look at each of them a little bit more. A few people have to head off, that's fine. So the first one is gain and loss. So I think this one is about thinking that if we only have this thing, we will be happy. Yeah, if we only have this thing, we will be happy. And then we get really worried about things that we have and think that if we lose this thing, we'll be unhappy. Yeah, that's what gain and loss really rotate around. And I think for me, lockdown has been really intense around this. So for me, I noticed that because I'm not in my usual way of distracting myself from the world, I get really caught up with what I have and what I don't have. and I get absurdly happy when I buy a new piece of kit or a new gadget on Amazon or whatever it is. Thankfully, I've been not buying on Amazon of late, which I'd really encourage people to do if you can. But ethically, they're very unethical, I think. But anyways, we get really caught up in having things. And if we have this piece of gadgetry, if we have this nice treat, even with refined things, like if we have this special type of tea, we'll be happy, And it's not to say that we can't enjoy those things, but we place all our happiness in them. And consumer society places so much emphasis on, well, it plays on this really, that it tells us, it reinforces this message: if we have this thing, we will be happy. And I think we always end up trying to game the system then to gain things and to avoid losses. In a way, with all the worldly wins, we try and game life with them, I've even noticed it, like when I'm driving, if I get past this guy and drive a bit faster than this guy, I'm a better person, I'm happier as a person, And I think men on roads can be very competitive with each other in this regard, maybe not just men. But I don't know if you've had the experience where you overtake someone and you feel a bit chuffed, and then they immediately speed up and overtake you again then, on a dual carriageway. I think that's like just gain and loss playing out really a lot of the time, Another big one for me is that, and I see it with lots, if you're anyway into sports teams, I love rugby. I've never particularly played, but I do enjoy it as a sport. And I get really caught up with Leinster/Ireland winning. And if they win, I'm happy for the day. And then when they lose, it's really, really painful. And to the degree that I invest my sense of well-being in 15 random men throwing an oddly shaped ball around at each other, to that degree, I'm going to cause myself suffering. And every year I have to learn the painful lesson that you can't put your happiness in your sports team. And every year I fail miserably at forgetting that, at remembering that, So, I mean, maybe, you can map that onto your own sports team, or shopping, or having a nice phone, or whatever it is for you that you invest yourself in, and ask yourself, does it tend to make you happy on the whole? And a big one, I think, is gadgets. And after a week of having a gadget, you might as well not have bought a new one. You know what I mean? A lot of the time. And yet we invest so much happiness in it, or we invest so much energy in it, rather, for our happiness. So that's gain and loss. There's a lot more that can be said, and we'll be coming back to these in subsequent weeks again. Fame and infamy is the next one. Most of us probably aren't celebrities and aren't really caught up in being a famous person, but we all probably want to be liked. In fact, most of us would probably hate being celebrities, actually, I'd say. I hope so, anyway. Part of me would like to be a celebrity, obviously, but I think it'd be more trouble than it's worth. But we all do want to be popular and well liked. We all really want people to laugh at our jokes more than they laugh at other people's jokes, probably, We all probably, want to be listened to be thought of well. And in a way, there's probably a lot of good in that, actually. It's not a bad thing to want to be well liked by people. But the problem is we put a lot of our energy into it, and we get really upset when it doesn't quite happen the way we want. And often then, you stop listening to people because you're just waiting for them to stop speaking so you can make your witty comeback, and that doesn't always connect us with other people. And it can even spill over into like Schadenfreude and things like that, where we actually take a kind of a secret pleasure and delight at other people's failings and misfortunes, and particularly because they make us look better. So, or another example, I think fame and infamy can cause us to compromise our ethical standards. So we might end up gossiping about someone we actually like and don't want to really gossip about, but just because, if we've a juicy bit of gossip, people will be more interested in us. So that's another example of how we're blown around by fame and infamy. And I think social media plays on this as well, where, you share a post and you get obsessive about how many likes it gets and so on if you're on social media. Or we end up trying to take the perfect picture of the meal we've cooked so we can share it on social media. And then we actually don't actually enjoy the meal itself, So we get very caught up in this, and we get terribly worried about not being liked by other people, in other words, or being thought of poorly by other people, and that's infamy. In terms of praise and blame, we can orientate a lot of our lives and take absurd amounts of pleasure from being praised. So I remember years ago in the Buddhist Centre, there was this very odd old lady. She was very, very lovely in a way. And she was slightly, I think she was kind of psychic or whatever. And she had this thing that you could tell her a word and she would just spontaneously recite a poem that she'd compose at some level deeper in her being that would just emerge. And she wouldn't necessarily even remember the poem after she'd said it, but they were all really well structured and made a lot of sense. And I remember chatting to her at one point and she said to me, "I can see your soul. You've got a very old, wise soul, you know?" And I was kind of like, oh, finally someone's realizing this, you know? And then I was in an order gathering with some of my friends, and a friend of mine was saying, yeah, that lady who does the poetry, she's quite something, isn't she? And she was telling me that I've got a really old soul. So she must go around saying this to lots of people, or else we've all got very old souls, which I probably don't think is the case, actually. But anyways, but it was a real lesson for me in praise and blame, you know, that it's not really dependable a lot of the time, praise. And I think it's good to rejoice in people. I think it's a very central and traditional Buddhist practice to rejoice in our friends and tell them things that they do well and encourage people. But it's when we start to build a real sense of egotism out of it and tend to look for it more than people are freely willing to give to us, or we get unhappy when we're not being praised enough, or when we want to be praised more than they're praised, you know, and things like that. You know, that's when it becomes a problem. And Nietzsche has a saying, which Vajrashura quotes in his book. He says, Nietzsche says, "We praise or blame according to whether one or the other offers a greater opportunity for our power of judgment to shine out." So we praise or blame according to whether the one or the other offers a greater opportunity for our power of judgment to shine out. So that's just quite a statement there. So I'll leave that for you to reflect upon during the week. You can read it in the book. But blame is often the counterpart. Well, it's the flip side of praise. And blame is where we think it's someone else's fault. Yeah. And we often do blame to avoid taking responsibility for our actions. And we can also be blamed for things that we haven't done or that we have done. And there's the story of the Buddha. The Buddha was quite a revolutionary at the time. He was quite a social revolutionary. He challenged a lot of the norms of the day, particularly around the caste system, which was a very unfortunate social system of hierarchy that was very, very cruel, actually. And he had a lot of people who didn't like him. And the story goes that there was a young woman who used to visit the Buddha and receive teachings from the Buddha and the disciples. And some of the Buddha's enemies killed her, actually, and put her body in the place where the Buddha used to, and his followers used to live, and started blaming the Buddha, saying the monks had killed her. And the Buddha and his disciples denied it, but the Buddha was really clear, look, just deny it and don't worry about praise and blame that happen. And some people were getting into praising the Buddha's followers and other people were blaming them. And the Buddha just said, look, just go your own way to his monks and nuns. Just don't get caught up in the stories. And in 2 weeks' time, it'll all be forgotten about. And in 2 weeks' time, it was all forgotten about again. And it was an example of just not playing into the game of praise and blame. So the praise and blame is often just a game that people play, you know? Anyways, we can reflect as well upon how we praise people and blame people. You know, often we praise people just to be liked more by them, and that isn't perhaps a great reason, you know, and it probably comes across a bit fake at times. Or not blaming people just because we're irritated because we didn't get what we want. So that's praise and blame. Again, there's a lot more in the book that you can read about these. And then the last one is pleasure and pain. So, you know, I was saying that I had a cold this week, and I'm pretty good at dealing with them at this stage, but I do still get into poor me, you know, when I'm in a state of illness, and, you know, your nose hasn't stopped running in 3 days and stuff like this, and, you know, things like that. And it's really uncomfortable sleeping. You can kind of start to feel sorry for yourself and things like that. And you can also get into irritation and just not really feeling very empathetic with the world or appreciative of the world. So we have to watch out for that. The pain, you know, pain can be very, very strong, actually. I mean, people with chronic pain conditions can really, you know, really find life difficult. But one of the most positive people I know, I was on retreat with her last week, Vidya Mala. She's one of the most positive and radiant people I've ever met. And she's lived with a chronic severe back pain all her life. and she just doesn't let it dominate her experience. And she's all kinds of techniques that she uses to work with that. And she's an incredible inspiration, I have to say. She's one of the most positive people I've ever met. And they've also shown in studies that when people have chronic pain, when you accept that there's pain, on a relative level, the pain levels go down. It doesn't affect you as much. So a lot of praise and blame is just accepting that there will be pain in life. And then on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with pleasure. But the problem with pleasure is that we often get really tight around it and try and hold on to it and not let it go. And then we kill any pleasure that we can get. Yeah? We get so caught up with the pleasure of meeting a new friend and so determined that it'll go well that we end up ruining the meeting with the friend. Do you know that kind of experience? Or we think that if only we have that pleasurable thing to eat, everything will be solved. And we put so much energy and so much expectation into the thing that it just tastes like dust in our mouth when we have it. We destroy our own pleasure a lot of the time by being caught up with having more and worried about losing it and flipping into pain. Yeah. So by pleasure we can mean physically, the pleasure of having something nice to eat, the pleasure of sunlight on our skin, but it can also be mental, the pleasure of remembering something really enjoyable, the pleasure of remembering a nice conversation with a dear friend. And it can also be physical pain then, the pain of banging your toe off a door, or the pain of remembering a traumatic conversation you had earlier in the week. So it's not just physical pain and pleasure, it's emotional, mental pleasure, pain and pleasure as well. The mind is another sense organ in Buddhism. And again, there's nothing wrong with pleasure. The Buddha encouraged healthy pleasure. But I think the only way that you can really be open to healthy pleasure is by accepting that there will be pain as well at times and not getting caught up in it. And Blake had a great poem called Eternity. So I'll read this twice just so we get this. He who binds to himself a joy does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. So he who binds to himself a joy does the winged life destroy. He who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. So it's quite a simple poem, like a lot of his poems from that book. I think it's Songs of Innocence, and I can't remember the full name now. Anyways, you can put it in the chat if you can remember it. But it's just saying that if you bind yourself to a joy, if you try and hold it really tightly and bind it to you, you'll destroy that pleasure. But if you kiss it as it flies, Songs of Innocence and Experience, thanks Sam. If you just enjoy things as they happen without getting tight around them, you'll live in eternity's sunrise. It'll be much more enjoyable and much more pleasurable. And in fact, Buddhism talks about how when we can just really openly experience pleasure without grasping onto it, it'll actually usually deepen into a deeper pleasure. Yeah? So anyways, that's all the content I want to give you tonight. There's probably loads more that could be said, and there's a lot more in the book, but to be honest, we're probably contented out at the moment. And there's a lot more that could be said about each of those as well. There's a lot more that could be said about each of those, and we will be returning to them over the coming weeks. Okay, so I'm a bit sick of presenting content. So what we'll do then is why don't we do another reflection just to explore again the worldly winds in our experience. I'll very briefly give you the home practice then, and then we'll go into groups so you guys get a chance to talk about all this stuff. It's not good just to be receiving. Let's have a chance to talk about it then. So again, why don't we set ourselves up? We'll do an extended version of the reflection that we did a few minutes ago. So just settling into being here, settling into sitting again. Again, you can put your hand on your belly and take a deeper breath or two. So maybe there was one of the pairs of the worldly winds there that really stood out to you, or one of them that, again, you had an experience of during the week, or an experience in the last couple of weeks. Maybe picking a different one from earlier if you want to. Or you can stay with the same one if it's useful to do that, just reminding yourself of that. So do the worldly winds, do you recognize them blowing in your life, really, is what I'm asking. And it might be particularly you notice them in things that have loomed large in your experience in the last wee while. And are there, looking at the patterns in your life, are there particular worldly winds that blow around you more frequently than others? And again, reflecting with the heart and with the guts rather than thinking too much about it. And it's perfectly normal that you will be blown around by the winds. There's nothing wrong about admitting that you're blown around by particular ones. Are there worldly winds that tend to affect you most strongly? Everyone has particular tendencies. We all have our own tendencies and drives and experience. So particular ones will affect us more than others, be more prevalent. And if you find at any stage bringing this to mind is troubling you too much, just come back to the breath again in the belly if you need to. Are there particular situations in which you're more susceptible to the worldly winds? You could also be open there to why those particular situations, why in those situations you're more susceptible, but not getting too conceptual or lost in thought. Is there any sense of how, if you're particularly concerned with one, that the other is often there as well? When you're preoccupied with pain, you're often preoccupied with pleasure too. Gain, loss, fame, infamy, pleasure and pain. Praise and blame. It's often easier to notice when the negative is there and we're preoccupied with that. But maybe we're preoccupied with the positive as well. And could we imagine what it would be like to be free of being blown around by these winds? Could we imagine not being so blown about by praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and infamy, pleasure and pain, particularly in relation to the one that you're bringing to mind? What would it be like to be free of this, being blown around? And the Buddha said that this state of freedom is possible. It's possible to be free of being blown around by the winds and to dwell in a much deeper positivity instead. That's what the Buddhist path is all about. And when you're ready, then just letting go of that reflection and just being with the breath in the belly again. And bringing the practice to a close and opening your eyes then when you're ready. Okay. So in a few moments, we'll go into the rooms. We'll go into the rooms for 12 minutes, Stephen, if you can set them for 12 minutes. But don't send us just yet. So I mentioned there is home practice for the course. So what I'd like you to do this week is do get your hands on the book if you can. Someone else was saying there that's available on Kindle as well. But we have the links, and do try and get them if you can. So read the introductory chapter and chapter 1. So they're quite short and they're very interesting, and much of it we've gone over already, so it'll be familiar to you. So do spend the time reading the book. It's a very interesting book as well. If you want to, you could read the text from the Buddha at the back of the book at some point. I mean, it's just interesting to read the Buddha's teaching and how he put it. It's much more formal language because it's a translation, but you could have a read of that as well if you have time. But the main thing really is to notice the worldly winds, yeah? Notice the worldly winds in your life. And particularly get better at recognizing them. So just during your day, you might just stop and go, oh man, I'm really caught up here in being liked by this person. And it's not actually very pleasant to be trying to do that. Why do I care if they like me or not? You know, that kind of thing. Or maybe I'm just getting caught up in the story that if I have that thing, I'll be really okay. Or maybe I'm getting really concerned with losing that thing, you know? So watch out, try and recognize the worldly winds as you do them this week, yeah? See when you're blown around. See when you're blown around this way and that. And maybe, and also, are you particularly prone to any one set of winds? Yes, are you particularly prone to any one set of winds? And one of the things you might want to do is get a little notebook and record every evening how you got on. So that would be a good thing to do just before you go to bed, or when you're in bed, just before you turn off the light. Just record how you got on with that day with the winds. And I will be asking you next week to come back and report in the groups about how you got on with these. Now, it's fine if you completely forget them. Well, it's okay. You know, it's not fine. It's okay if you completely forget to do anything. We won't give out to you. But do try and, your main task is to, how are you going to remember to do this? And that's what I'd like you to discuss in the groups now. How are you going to remember to do this? And then the last thing as well is to join Slack and share how you're getting on. So just before we go into the groups, we might need to go 11 minutes, Stephen. So how are you going to remember to do this in the groups? And you might also want to share how you got on in the reflection. And the class will be over at 9. But if you have any questions that you want to ask, I can stay on a few extra minutes if you want to ask any questions as well. Then, so Stephen, when you're ready, let's send us into the groups again, and we'll just chat about how we're going to remember to pay attention to the worldly winds this week, and anything that you want to share from your reflection. Anyways, it's 9 o'clock. So guys, best of luck with it during the week. We'll see you next week. Do come a couple of minutes early at 7 o'clock, and there's loads more stuff to go into next week. If you've any questions, you can feel free to stay on, and we'll take a few questions. Sorry we didn't have more time in the night itself for questions and answers, but yeah, and best of luck, and feel free to put any comments in the chat, and we'll see you soon. So, and if you want to ask a question, you can maybe unmute yourself now and just ask. And if not, we'll just end the call. But feel free to leave anytime you need to know. Yep.